Hey guys, welcome back to the Mind Body broadcast with Austin and Marty. And today we are going to do one of our routine monthly Q&As. We have some pretty in-depth questions today. We actually have about 5 that we want to go over because they're so in-depth. I think they're probably going to eat up most of our time. But we have a couple psych-related questions, couple different nutrition-related questions, some really interesting stuff today.
Yeah, I love that people are starting to ask some more of the psych-ended stuff, because this is one of the reasons why Austin and I decided to do this kind of podcast, because we found that people were going a little bit too hard into the finite stuff, such as the macros, like how much weight should I lift and whatever, as opposed to dipping into the mind stuff. Whereas all the way back to the 70s when Arnold and Frank Zane and those guys were always preaching about like the mindset stuff, and just how even we did one of the Q&As we did was about like self-visualization and things like that. Like, just it matters so much that if you kind of have this hybrid between the mind and the body, that's when you'll start to see, we'll say, the real progress or the real results.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and we know, even if you are science-minded, I mean, we know just the impact of stress, for example. The negative impact of stress, and it's so cumulative, and it can be something as simple as stressing about the details. Well, the details only really do you good if you can handle them. I guess that's a way that you could, the way that you could put it. And I don't know how you do it, but I'm sure it's probably similar. But I know myself, I have various levels of detail that I use with people, because for some people, it's just way too much stress to look at, minutia. And for other people, they do great with that, and they're very level-headed, and they're not, stressed naturally. So, I mean, we might dig in a little bit deeper, but, another person, they don't need to be measuring their blood glucose every 35 minutes and freaking out if they missed a meal by 15 minutes. So, yeah, stuff like that is very much psych-related.
Yeah, I couldn't. That's exactly what I was going to say, too. I think that's perfect. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and dig into the questions. We'll start over on our Instagram thread. First one's a real good one here. I really like this one. It is, do you think self-punishment is good? And if so, why? For example, say you're going to do something and you can't do it, and you punish yourself for it. On one hand, I was thinking you shouldn't, because in the past, it's in the past, and what's done is done. It's out of your control. But on the other hand, I was also thinking that if you don't punish yourself, you might not internalize and learn a lesson from it, so you may never accomplish it. So essentially, could you use self-punishment as a motivator? And I think some people certainly could, and some people it's going to be a huge detriment. I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on that?
You know what? Anytime I've seen the classic one for this that most people will kind of grab here, especially if you've been a competitor or not, is you overeat or you binge and then you punish yourself by doing cardio, especially if it's an action. Because I think there would be a little bit of a difference to a self-punishment in terms of even like looking yourself in the mirror and saying you're dumb for doing this or something like that, versus doing that physical punishment. Whereas the binge and then cardio, it never works ever, and that just creates terrible habits. It creates that mindset of that I'm worthless, or how could I have done that, as opposed to really trying to flip it around to, I don't want to be like the whole the secret type of thing and say always look for the positivity in it, but you got to find out your whys that come not only from the physical but come from the mental too. When I say the whys, one of the coaching hacks I have for my clients is if they always eat a cookie at 8:00 at night for whatever reason, that's the thing they do. I go, okay, what were you doing? Where were you? What was the environment? And then what happened like a little bit before that? And because and you don't necessarily need to journal it, but I've harped on my clients a little bit to at least journal that moment as close as they can to the moment. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say you ate the cookie at 8:00. Don't wait till the next day to try to think about this or try to dwell on it. Do it right then and there. Because let's say you go to the gym every day at 6, you come home at 7:30, the kids are screaming and yelling, or you're in a positive place with your relationship, or your roommate is this, and then you're too stressed out, and then you eat the cookie. But if you're just so busy beating yourself up saying, you idiot for eating the cookie, you should stop doing that, or just potentially not even having the cookies in the house, which could work, just using an example here. But if you don't get down to the root of that cause as to what caused that negative behavior, any kind of self-depreciation, any kind of we'll say, harm, or even making fun of yourself or putting yourself down, I really don't think that's going to be the answer to it at all. Because anytime I've seen this, especially when it comes from coaching, and I know that you've seen this too in terms of the coach now shaming the person, and they open up and say, hey, Marty, hey, Austin, every night during the week at 8 o'clock, I have a cookie. And then we say, well, that's stupid. You should stop that. Why are you doing that for? That's wrecking your progress. Now we have this shame spiral or shame cycle, whereas there is going to be nothing freaking good coming of this at all. And I've seen that so many times, sadly, and I'm not exaggerating at all. I know when people say, oh, I get an email every day about this. No, I've seen this so much where coaches are either shaming or they have the approach of being a drill sergeant or something. And you know what? It never works. So I'm going to go with any kind of self punishment mentally. So I know it says physically here, but any kind of self punishment mentally, no. It's just creating it's called stinking thinking. I think Zig Ziglar came up with that. One of the first motivational speakers back in the 50s or whatever. I'm probably dating myself by not even knowing that. But that's stinking thinking, and that's going to try to. Every single time that you do this to yourself, you're going to feel down. You're going to feel more against it, and then potentially that might even start harming your gym progress in a sense of if you know that every day at 8 o'clock you start eating that cookie, then you're at the gym at 6 o'clock and you're thinking, oh man, I know I'm just going to F this up a little bit later, so why bother trying? And this, so that's my answer, is that is not really going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree in 99% of situations. I mean, you can also, you'll have clients too, from a coaching perspective, you'll have people that you definitely need to be more stern with, and others that
sure
you need to be a little bit more subtle with. But even the ones that you are stern with, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be negative.
Right.
Because there's a difference between being, just being a jerk and actually giving some kind of constructive criticism that's going to be useful. Telling someone they suck and they're doing something, wrong, that really offers no solution. You know what I mean? It doesn't offer anything insightful that's going to help them past whatever the situation is. So yeah, while you might need to be, you could use willpower, you might need to have a little bit of willpower. You might need to tell yourself to suck it up or whatever. Mm-hmm. You also have to have some kind of solution in place, and something that's actually insightful, and not just, hey, why are you messing up? You suck. Stop.
Sure.
So yeah, definitely criticism, the criticism without instruction is kind of useless, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, well, exactly, and that's I love how you said just criticism, because that's not constructive criticism. That's not someone saying, hey, your legs are looking really good, but we need to bring up your shoulders. Well, that's not someone shitting all over your shoulders. That's just saying something you need to do. But I'm really looking at the language that this person said here. It says, on one hand, I was thinking you shouldn't because it's in the past and what's done is done. It's out of your control. I disagree with that, because what if it is in your control? Right? Just like the whole cookie thing. That is something that's in your control. And if you don't go back and think about or try to feel about why you did this stuff, you are setting yourself up for, we'll say, victimhood, or for that to recreate again. So maybe not so much going back and mentally berating yourself, but going back and trying to get to the bottom of why that happened is going to be kind of everything. So then you can go, oh, okay, this is why I'm doing that. That sucks. I shouldn't have done that. But now I have at least the knowledge to be able to figure that out, because knowledge is power. Because if something, if it's the whole, why does this keep happening to me thing, is it really out of your control? As in, is there a four car pileup on the highway and you weren't able to make it to the gym, and now you're saying, damn, stupid? Or was it because you just didn't want to go out on the roads? Because there's different ways you can approach this here, but being straight up, like you said, negative or punishing yourself for this, it's not really going to be the most productive way to go about it, I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, cool. That was a good question. I like that.
I like that.
Okay, so next one we have a metabolism question. Have you ever experienced anyone with a very adaptive metabolism? For example, a female that can maintain their body weight on, let's say, 1900 calories, but they do not respond to lower intakes, which on paper should be a deficit. If so, how have you managed in a case like this? Yeah, this is like a lot of people. I'm not laughing, but this is a lot of people.
Yep.
This is way more people than, most would realize. And especially if you're a coach that's worked with, hundreds or thousands of athletes, you run into this a lot. So, I mean, biologically, females tend to be a little bit more adaptive. And I think that's just a gender thing, because they bear children and they have different hormonal mechanisms that, it's slightly different than a male. And plus too, I mean, their starting caloric intake is going to be lower. So, I mean, you really have less resources to work with initially anyhow. So, I mean, it might seem adaptive, but, if you have a male that goes from 4,000 calories to 1,500 calories, that's a lot bigger, quote unquote deficit than a female that goes from 2,000 to 900.
Right.
So it just looks, the 900 number just looks more daunting because it's lower. Yeah. So, man, there's several things that could be going into it. We're assuming this person is doing all the things they should be in their surplus, like they're at their metabolic ceiling, I guess you could say. They're not overdoing cardio. They're not overly stressed. Their hormones are correct in terms of like thyroid and function and sex hormones and things. Assuming all that stuff's right, some of these people just need a very aggressive cyclical approach. In terms of, you have to be really harsh, and then you have to refeed properly to maintain metabolic function and make sure you're kind of doing those adaptations, because you're not going to be able to get rid of all. You can't just do your refeed and expect all the adaptions to go away. But the reality of the situation is you may have to get pretty, down to the nitty gritty low calories, and then do proper refeeding, diet breaks. All those things can be implemented to help stave it off. And I think another thing that happens too is somebody lowers. I see this a lot too. If you haven't worked with a lot of people, you lower the calories one time, and on paper it looks like they should be in a deficit, but you kind of freak out because nothing happens. Well, truthfully, I mean, you might have to lower the calories a lot more to really get those fat loss gears turning than you originally expected. You might not be able to go from 1,900 to 1,700 and nothing may happen. That's just the reality. Sometimes people will adapt. And I noticed too, and I'm sure you've probably seen this, that some people just need larger, but maybe perhaps less frequent changes, meaning like to get into a deficit, they might need to drop 400 calories versus the other person that needs 200, because if you just keep dropping them 100 or 200 calories at a time, their metabolism just slows down. So you got to kind of get ahead of the curve with a little bit bigger change, and then start implementing your refeeds and things like that. So two things: go back and listen to our refeed episode, and
yes,
and also go back and listen to the myths episode where we talk about how low people actually get in calories.
Yep. I'll actually link both of those here in the show notes too, because there's some pretty valuable information in there about this. So, my take on this is, I'll start out with is that if you've seen like Fitbits now, there's even some ones that you can kind of put like a strap around your chest area or whatever, is that these things are still all fine and dandy. Like, I do have some people measure their steps. I still have some people use their heart rate for certain things, but none of these devices, or none of these, we'll just call them devices, they can't measure metabolism. Like, that's the craziest thing is why I love when you jump on a cardio machine, and because of your heart rate or your weight or your height that you put in, now it will say you just burnt 600 calories during the session. It's like, how the hell does this know what my genetic metabolism is and be able to spit that out to me? So it's like, me and you, let's say me and you, for whatever reason, are the same weight. I gain an extra 80 pounds of muscle here, and I'm your size, and we put that in, and it's like, okay, me and you both just burnt 600 calories because of our heart rate. It's like, It's just preposterous, right? And this is why you will see some of these women be able to get, like, I had a girl named Christine, and she went into peak week on 115 pound, I think she was 5'5", 5'6", bikini girl, went into peak week on over 250 grams of carbs with refeeds. Yet that's almost unheard of, but yet that's metabolism for you. And then there's people like, if you know, I know you do, but I'm just saying for people out there, if they know who Juan Morel is, dude would have to eat 10,000 calories of Big Macs and stuff just so his metabolism was not getting in the shitter. So not only can we not measure that stuff, but it is so damn adaptive based upon who you are, who your parents are, and what you've been doing. Like, were you a gymnast growing up? Do you just get winded doing like a flight up the stairs, or like where you're at? Because we can't measure that stuff, but it's just like anything else, is that you need to have the data on it. Like, one of the most important things that I'll ask on my new client intakes is, what have you done before? Like, have you done some kind of really severe restricted? Did you do that? If anyone remembers the HCG diet, where it was like 500 calories and you were banging some HCG, and now there was this magical thing happening. And let's say if you just were finished doing that before you came talk to Austin and Marty, now your metabolism is going to be so adaptive in the wrong way that now we need to build that back up, in a sense. And not saying you can build your metabolism above and beyond, but you need to get it back to a point of where it's responsive. But I love that analogy too, of like the whole 4,000 calories going down to 1,500, because that's not really that responsive of metabolism. That's probably pretty junky. They were able to get to 4,000 at one point, which is good for them. Like I know for myself, like even at 3,000 calories, I can put on some muscle, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that I don't have as much wiggle room as others. And yeah, that is very true. That's not just anecdote. Women's metabolism just adapt quicker. Like, I can put someone on X calories and Y cardio, and then if I make Y cardio into Z cardio now, before, like, sure, they might get this adaptation. Sorry, they might get the fat burning going, whatever, but they will adapt so much quicker and need another change more so than men way sooner. And that's just flat out science. And so, sorry, ladies, that sucks, but that's just kind of the way that things work there. But these equations that we have, like the Harrison Benedict and a couple of the other ones, for gauging where your body is at, where your metabolism is at, based upon your job, based upon your age and whatever. And again, you can listen to our podcast on genetics, just because that's just part of the cards. It's I like to have this analogy. Oh, here we go already, Austin. Here it comes. Is that it's almost like you're playing some kind of card game, and you are given 8 cards, but you can only play 5. And that's what you get to do. So you get to choose kind of which 3 you dump out, which 5 you play. So if you want to constantly be doing something poor for your metabolism, like as in you're going into a contest prep and already doing 7 days of cardio at 60 minutes, you probably just threw out a couple really damn good cards you could have used to play a lot later on in your contest prep. So that's kind of the way to think about it, is that you were dealt those cards, and how you play them, or which ones your coach says, okay, you're learning how to play poker from a coach, and it says, no, that's a really good hand, don't throw that out. And then the rest of the cards that kind of come up during the prep, like on the river or the flop or whatever. I'm not a big poker player. I'm just kind of making this up as I go. But that's just kind of what happens. Until then, you start learning your body. You start learning this through shows, and now you go, okay, I shouldn't have threw that card out. I will keep that card to play that later on, which will therefore give me a better chance at winning or having a better hand.
Straight from Marty's mouth, folks.
Bam! There it is.
Sweet. Okay, that was a good question. So it's relatively common. It's not. It can be kind of a daunting task, especially when you aren't used to working with those situations. But if you are somebody that is going to be working with people and their fat loss goals, contest prep, you are going to run into it a lot.
Yeah.
So, okay. Next one is another training/psych question, it looks like. So, all right. So they say a client, and I'm assuming this is maybe their client, but they say a client has been essentially going with the kitchen sink approach when training, somewhat structured in regards to body part splits, but rep ranges, intensifiers randomly thrown in at each session, or because the dude on IG looked cool doing it.
Oh God.
successful approach to getting them to mentally buy into structured program, probably hypertrophy or neural based, considering where they are currently at. More than likely, they're not recovering well. So also introducing less days and volume in the gym to start until the body is in a good place to move into their preferred phase of training. So I'm not sure what they're asking exactly. And maybe if they're asking how would you get a client to buy into structured programming and not look at the guy on IG. Yeah. I mean, that seems like the base of the question. I mean, if they're paying you for your services, for one, that is what it is. I mean, sometimes you just kind of have to relay that message to people. Like, look, if you want to pay me to help you, you need to listen, type of thing. How you relay that message to someone, again, might be a little different. Kind of going back to that first question, the whole criticism thing, it can definitely vary, but yeah, I mean, I do get that sometimes. I'll have the person that says, hey, I saw this and I saw this and so does this and that. A big mistake, I think, for some people is if they are being coached, for example, and they look around and they think just because somebody else is doing something that they should be doing it, type of thing. Yeah. So maybe that's the guy on IG or so-and-so has their client doing something, or their friend's coached by somebody else and their coach has them doing something that you're not doing. And I know you've run into this, I'm sure, a million times, and they ask you, well, why are they doing that? Shouldn't we be doing that?
Yeah. And
normally the answer is no, because otherwise we would have been telling you to do it in the first place. So it's just sometimes not sometimes, I mean, all the time, you just need to trust what your coach is telling you to do. And it's typically, if we need you doing something, we're going to tell you to do it. And we have your best interest in mind. So, I mean, in terms of programming though, yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen that with people where they have their nutrition's very good. They have everything nailed down, but they just kind of go into the gym and they just like to make their workouts hard. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Hard, but not productive necessarily, because hard doesn't necessarily mean you're making any progress. And I think the problem becomes is that when these workouts are so random that there's just no way to track progression. Mm-hmm. You don't know if you're progressing on lifts. You don't know if you're overreaching or overtraining or any of this, because it's just nothing's ever the same. So for me, especially as a coach, like the more routine I can make a training program and actually stick with it for a while, the better, because that just gives me more feedback. I mean, if something changes every single week or every single day or whatever, I mean, it makes it damn near impossible to figure out what's going on, for lack of better words.
I like to call that workout ADHD, which basically just means they go in and they see and they know it's chest day, just an example. And then as long as they're doing chest, that's going to work. Well, depending upon, and like we did a podcast on this too, like I think, or not, like it was a exercise order selection and things like that, right? It's like, well, obviously if you start with squats at the beginning of your program and then you order versus you end with squats at the end of your program, do you think you're going to be able to do the same amount of reps for the same amount of weight after you're already doing 2 to 4 to 5 other exercises? Of course not. So one of the analogies I like to give for this one was if someone is going into school and they do a month of being a carpenter, then they have a month of being a pilot, then they have a month of studying skateboarding, and then they try to come back to trying to remember what they were learning as a carpenter. That's probably not going to happen, because having a month to do this, or even let's even break it down to a week, and you only studied a week of a carpenter and then went into the skateboarder, then went into the astronaut, then went into the everything. You're just not going to remember, and not only that, but then you won't have any kind of objective numerical data to kind of go off of that. And one of the best ways to kind of think about that is that if you were learning an exercise, let's say you're trying to learn the squat, and we do the squat for a week, we do it 2, maybe 3 times, and then we go back to it in a month. You're probably not going to remember what the hell you were taught for learning to squat. So now you're going to have to relearn that again, and then we're going to have to try to figure out what the hell was frigging working, because it is like I don't want to give a direct time for how how long workouts should last, but I get asked this question a lot, including last week, because one of my clients had been doing his program for 2 weeks, and he said, okay, when are we going to be changing it up or switching it up? And thank you, you bastard from P90X, Tony Horton or whatever. That muscle confusion. Like, yeah, the whole, like, he invented the terms muscle confusion and invented the term switch it up. And why? Because it frigging sells. Because it played into all these. It's new. It's exciting. And listen, I get it. I get how, like, going in and sometimes you doing the same workout can start to get quote unquote boring. But you know what's not boring? Results. Or starting to see your body change in the way that it should be. So I think if anything, like outside of maybe changing a couple parameters, such as you're now, instead of doing 6 to 10 reps, you're now doing 10 to 15 reps. But if you're ditching a program after 4 to 6 weeks, you are going to have no idea if that workout did anything for you. And this is also going to dip into a little bit different in between being a coach versus being a mentor. So if someone wants to ask, like, why am I doing this, or why aren't we changing this up? It's like that's really getting in, like, because a coach will show you what to do, a mentor will explain the rationale and why behind this. So we're almost you're getting a little bit of a bonus here in this. We are kind of telling you the whys behind this stuff, but it makes it so damn impossible for us to find out what's working. But now, if you did squats for at the beginning of your workout for 10 weeks, and then we see some noticeable difference, whereas you were doing leg press at the beginning of your workouts for the last 8 to 10 weeks, we're going to, whoa, okay, you're responding really damn good to squats. Let's keep those some way, somehow in your next workout. And then it all kind of accumulates. It's just a heck of a lot like one of the other questions there about the metabolism, is that we have to have notes on this stuff. We have to know, or else we are not going to have any really palatable ideas or any kind of really concrete ideas on what to change for you guys, right? And it goes back to the whole fail to plan to fail. But I can firmly tell you that the people that go in and they just kind of pick workouts at random and they train really freaking hard, it will work to a point, but so does everything. Everything will work to a point, and then it will just stop, and you are going to have to be a damn lot smarter with your workout program to start progressing.
Yeah, of course, and it will especially work for, new to intermediate trainees. It's probably going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I said, for me, and as a coach, it's just damn near impossible to figure out what's working if everything's scattered. And I could be honest. I'm trying to think off my own programming. Heck, last, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, like, I've literally done like the exact same workouts, other than I changed like 2 exercises and a couple rep ranges because they stopped progressing.
Yeah.
And I made a ton of progress. You know what I mean? So, and you have to just find, just because something's the same doesn't mean you can't enjoy the workout. Find enjoyment in progressing on your lifts, perhaps. You know what I mean? Like, make it a game. Challenge yourself.
Yeah.
If you are somebody that needs to keep a logbook, that's fine. I don't have, some of my clients do, some of them don't. It's just really, it's up to them if they want to or not. But yeah, keep a logbook, beat your lifts. It's just that, and like you said, perfect example is, hey, if you're making progress, that's fun, right? That's the goal. So,
But if you're here's another way to think. It's delayed gratification thing too, and a lot of the time that I'll see the people that want to switch it up or change the workouts or whatever is because they want to be sore. And my God, like, if they're so attributing, and I've been there when I was younger for sure, but I found out that no, it just sounds sexy. It's not the way it works. But if you're not sore, therefore now you're not getting a damn good workout. And what a bunch of frigging crap. Like, I can not only completely tell you that that's just not the way to look at it all, but if you're going off it completely, but just, am I sore or not, or do I feel like I've been beat up by a train after a workout, that's just not it. That means your body is not adapting in the good way. That means your body's not recovering in a good way. And then again, we just have no data to see what we should change.
Yep. 100%. Okay, so over on Instagram, that is our last one. I did have that one through direct message, which is kind of a doozy that we discussed. So we will go ahead and go ahead and do that one. Okay, so I'm going to slightly condense the question just because it's kind of long. Essentially, the question is talking about cortisol release from meals and how different macronutrients affect that, and protein potentially causing the largest cortisol release or largest or highest serum cortisol level after a meal in comparison to the macros. So the question was, would it be more sensible to keep protein at 1 gram per pound of lean mass versus 1 gram per pound of total body weight? So yeah, I mean, depending on how much body fat the person has, that could be a little bit lower protein intake. And I think we could say a couple things first. We know that in terms of like actually just maintaining muscle mass or even growing, I think the research has showed that you don't need that much protein, really. It's something there was even research as low as like 1 gram per kilo or 0.8 grams per kilo, which is like, that's a tiny amount compared to what most of us consume. So yeah, if you're worried about the whole like loss of muscle mass or not being able to progress, you'd have to really underconsume protein. So that's probably not really an issue. But in terms of, I actually viewed, he sent me a couple studies. I actually looked at a couple of them, and I was telling you before the show, I had gone over a little bit of this when I had all those adrenal issues, because I was curious, how does diet actually play into recovering my adrenal hormones? And what I found was, it actually seemed like, in my case, that a more keto-esque type diet, like a more traditional keto diet where I actually brought protein down a little bit, and obviously carbohydrates are pretty much nothing, and brought my fats up, I did better and recovered faster. And of course I read around and looked at just different anecdotes, and that seemed kind of across the board. So and then when looking at the studies he sent, it seems like protein was the highest, and then carbohydrates was maybe second highest in terms of like the cortisol levels. So yeah, I would say there's potentially some merit in this. Now, my dilemma with this whole thing is that I have had people get, serum cortisol tests, like their AM cortisol and their blood work, for example, or get 4-point cortisol done, which would be all day via like the dried urine tests and stuff. And I cannot say that I've ever had anyone with a, hyper cortisol level that I could attribute to protein. And yeah, I wasn't like I said, hey, let's get your, like you said before the show, it's like, well, you'd literally have to have them get a baseline test, eat more protein, and then get another test. And would be super inconvenient. But just looking back and off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone that had those issues. And because the fact of the matter is, everyone that I've tested was already eating high protein. So, because pretty much all of us eat quote unquote high protein. Right. But every single issue that I've had was basically corrected through maybe some over the counter supplementation and lifestyle changes, and no alteration in protein levels. So was protein the actual factor there? Not likely. Like, let's think about it. The amount of impact that we're getting from protein over consumption versus stress, is it even in the same realm? Because you gave the perfect example before the show is, yeah, okay, it acutely raises cortisol, but it's not like you eat protein and your cortisol levels chronically elevated now forever. It's not. So the things that are actually going to keep your cortisol elevated or make your adrenal glands or your pituitary work all the time are going to be stress, lack of sleep, being sympathetically driven, nervous, anxious, all that stuff. Not protein consumption. So yeah, I can't think of any like actual applicable real world case where I suppose if somebody was having some, like, their cortisol was crazy high and they really wanted to do everything they could to, give their pituitary a break, then they could potentially lower their protein intake. But again, I don't know. That seems like splitting hairs.
It is, exactly. It's splitting hairs, right? Like, even if you were to do some kind of whopping consumption of protein, let's say like 3, 4, 500 grams plus a day, and you had some kind of potentially latent kidney problem, okay, these are the times that we should start looking into these things, but like a little bit heavier. But I'll retain that this kind of we'll say belief or whatever is that if you, and like you summed it up for me, is that if you believe that these things are going to have a problem, you are probably going to be giving yourself the problem more so than the problem actually is. And it's if you are, let's say, it's no, by no means any offense to this person asking that question at all, because I was so similar to this. I was looking into what was the exact right, like what should I be using, 15 grams of BCAAs or 18 grams of BCAAs back when I believed in those shitty things anyways. But it's like that time that I was doing that, I could have either been cooking, I could have been doing more stuff with my friends, which probably would have been lowering the cortisol to begin with anyways. I could have been getting new comic books and finding out who the Punisher's going to F up this time. Like, I could have been doing anything other than doing, like, and I know, because I still to this day will love a lot of research stuff like this too, right? But you can go so far down this rabbit hole. And why, like I believe you said that the gentleman or the lady had about 4 studies that they published or posted to you. It's like, why they're doing these studies is a little bit beyond me, unless, of course, they're looking at something very real, like as in there was a kidney problem and now the protein level was getting added or something. But it's just such dynamically useless information for so much of us, and how you would be able to apply that to, let alone for, let's say, Austin and my job as coaching, would be so out there in terms of, like, let's say I said to you, Austin, you're my client, I say, you know what, we better start watching that protein level versus lean body mass versus total body mass, because we might be elevating your cortisol and it's going to put your body into some kind of state of shock. That's just going to worry the shit out of you. And now you're going to be like, oh my God, should I have this 25-gram scoop of protein after my workout, or a 30-gram scoop? And that's not what you should be thinking about. It's just so nonsensical. And again, this is not putting that person down at all, because I was this exact way, and I wish I could fly back to 10 years ago, Marty, and just give him a flick on the ear and say, hey man, there's much better things you could be researching and much better things that you could be looking into to either enhance your physique, calm down your damn stress, or to make your life and be more improved.
Yep. And you talked about just that, like, super high protein intake. Well, this off season that I currently did, I experimented with some of the protein overfeeding, when they went up.
That's right. Yeah. The protein refeeds. Yeah.
Guess what? My cortisol was great.
No, it wasn't. How dare you say that? Yeah.
So my point was that I was actually eating less protein when my adrenal function was bad. So of course it really just boiled down to stress and lifestyle factors at that point. It wasn't, and I suppose you could make a case with someone that had like an autoimmune disease, like they had Cushing's or Addison's would be the other ones, where they have like their body's literally attacking immune attack against their adrenal gland, which, yeah, I totally get it. In that case, they probably are going to have to take medications as well to blunt that. But yeah, in the case of a normal person, control your stress and eat your protein.
Exactly. Perfect. Love it. Nothing else to add.
Cool. All right. So we have just a little bit more. We're wrapping it up here. So the next one is about, someone asks about TRT and blurry vision. So this is an interesting one. And
okay.
They're not necessarily saying that the TRT caused the blurry vision. It's just that the two things started simultaneously, so they aren't really sure what's causing it. But they said is 51 years old, had recently started TRT, is having issues with blurry vision, dizziness, so things along those lines. And the two things had started, like I said, they had started their TRT, and then those issues had started popping up. But and they mentioned not high estrogen, because the first thing that comes to my mind is I do remember reading something about high estrogen causing like blurry vision, causing antsiness, like anxiety and things like. And I know that high hormones or hormone fluctuations can cause that too, because you'll get people that like they'll just start TRT, or people that do like a full cycle or something, and they do get anxiety. Some androgens, they cause anxiety. So yeah, I could see that being plausible, but they said no issues with estrogen. So I don't know if they've actually checked their estrogen.
Sure.
And they said no blood pressure problems. The only thing that really jumps out at me, and I'd honestly have to probably investigate more, is migraines.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because there was actually I did some research on migraines at one point, and I was totally unaware of this. I thought normal migraine is, pressure right in the front of your head, like that frontal area under your eyes and all that. And there's actually a lot of different types of migraines, and a lot of them don't even present themselves as pain at all. But they do present themselves as blurry vision, tunnel vision, all of the stuff he's essentially describing. He says, he says, I had good vision, but it's been wonky ever since, fuzzy vision. And he also gets watery eyes. Yes, I mean, that's the only thing that comes to my mind. The watery eyes, I'm not really sure. The watery eyes kind of sounds more like estrogen to me. So, I don't know. That's great. I'd honestly have to look into it a little more. The only thing that maybe pops into my head is if you don't have high serum estrogen on your blood work, you could have like poor estrogen metabolism in your liver or something like that. I do occasionally see that in males and females where they'll have their blood work doesn't necessarily reveal it, but we'll use something like calcium D-Glucarate as a supplement, and that will help their liver metabolize the estrogen a little bit better, and so they actually feel better when they use that. So, I mean, those are the only two things that really pop up to me.
So I love that, and really quickly, I love that you mentioned calcium D-Glucarate. Like, that's, if anyone's going to be in looking into TRT, which testosterone replacement therapy, or anything along those lines, I'm not going to tell you all the benefits of it because I really don't know them. But what a wonder supplement! It's just something that is so beneficial for you. It's not the cheapest supplement in the world, but it's got such a catch-all for so many things. So that's something definitely to look into, but. What stands out here, I'm going to say very, very firmly, I am not very educated in this subject. But what stands out to me of what I would look at from having critical thinking myself is that I see it says, since I started self-TRT. Okay, if you are out there and you are looking to do some testosterone replacement therapy and you don't have firm blood work, this person, I don't think they said they have blood work, but they could go back and listen to our lab work podcasts, which are going to be phenomenally helpful. Austin crushed it on both of those ones. But so self-TRT would mean not from the doctor. This would mean be from an underground source. So that could be something to it. There could be something in the oil that is causing some kind of either blurry vision or causing some watery eyes, just something to kind of rule out. And then we have this really great ability as human beings to not understand the difference between causation and correlation. It's like one of those things that if your car crashed and you got locked out of your house, it's not the fault of the car crashing that you got locked out of the house, or vice versa. So, sometimes these things magically pop up at the exact same time. I've seen it time and time again. And maybe this person is stressed about the using the TRT, and maybe that's what's causing the blurry vision. Now they're grinding their teeth more. Maybe there's something's going on that's giving them the blurry vision. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the TRT. Again, like I know it says that there's no other high estrogen issues, but I could be on the right track. How to fix it is go in and get the damn blood work done, because be 100% like on this stuff. It's not something to play around with. It doesn't mention the dosage here for the TRT. Maybe you're self-administering too much. Maybe you're self-administering too little. Those could be two very prevalent things here. It says that, of course, that the fuzzy vision comes and goes. Is it around the time of your shot? Is it not around the time of your shot? Like, this is what have we been saying quite a few times in this Q&A here, is that the more data you have or the more information you have, that's what's going to be able to lead you this. And then when you show up to the doctor, you can have these notes here with you and say, hey, listen, a day after my shot, I'm getting this, I'm using this dosage. And then that you'd be able to ask that. And hopefully if the bioidentical hormone doctor or even the physician is a little bit more informed than most out there, they'll be able to tell you this info and say, listen, I've seen this when this happens. And they go, oh, okay, cool. And you can kind of be able to kind of do that. But the whole where it says fiddle with androgen ratios by supplementing, this self playing around stuff like this, oh man, and it's just watch out. You know what I mean? Because before you know it, like you said, there are some compounds out there that will cause anxiety. I know people that have heard that a compound will give anxiety, take it, and they'll get the anxiety just because they thought they heard it. It's like a reverse placebo effect kind of thing. So that's something to look into too. I don't know if this person maybe read that sometimes fuzzy vision can come with TRT or whatever. Maybe you read it somewhere that we didn't. But let's put it this way: I have yet to see this happen. But I have seen this on, we'll say, cycle dosages or heavier things, or just wacky things happen that aren't necessarily documented because we don't have these studies. We aren't allowed, and we shouldn't be allowed to stuff people full of anabolic and androgenic hormones and just kind of wait and see what happens, because that can cause more problems than we know. It's like you can almost parallel it a little tiny bit to, like, let's say we are going to say, okay, let's see what's someone doing 2 8 balls of cocaine a day, see how their blurry vision becomes, and then before you know it, the doctor is thrown out of they're put to the death sentence, because we're not allowed to do that with human beings. It's called nonsensical. That's why we do these trials on rats, to make sure, just in case. So I know I'm getting a little bit too far off topic there, but I really wish I had a better answer for you other than get some more data, do a little bit more following up with a doctor, and just maybe take a look into that lab that you're using for underground and just see if anyone else has had a problem with that. It could be something sneaky in the oil.
Yeah, it could be like the solvent, preservative, whatever. Hell,
well, you know what? I will say this, and this is, I know we're going a little bit far off topic here in terms of, because this isn't a PED podcast at all, but I know for a fact that one of the coaches that I talked to that was very high ticket, very high name, he had one of his clients that was using a certain compound that had it tested. There was WD-40 in the friggin' compound. It came back. Yeah. So it's like, okay, if this is an underground lab, you do not. It's just, ladies and gentlemen, like it's just like going and getting a street drug. You do not know what this is laced with. You do not. It's not quality controlled. So just be careful. That I'm not trying to scare the crap out of anyone with this stuff, but I'm saying, you are taking that chance there. Whereas opposed to if you're getting testosterone replacement therapy from the doctor and it's being made by a lab like Lilly or Pfizer or something, you are going to be getting what you're getting. So that would this gentleman that's 51. If you know that you need TRT or you're wanting to get about that, go get it legally, because why the hell not?
Yeah, he's in just for reference too. He's in the UK, so
well then and that's even easier to get, isn't it? There.
Yeah, personal usage there.
That's what I mean. Yep,
very open and legal. So that's why TRT there is not really a big thing, because the doctor's like, well, why am I going to do TRT when everyone just buys their own shit kind of thing? But yeah, hell, you never know. But that also, like you said, that also opens you up to all kinds of issues with whatever's in the product. Definitely. Okay. Well, we have I think there's one more on the list, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And this is from one of your clients, actually, talking about meditation. She says, Marty is always suggesting meditation. It's supposed to be good for me. How does one go about this? I have no idea how to meditate. Is there an app for that?
Hi, Colette. How are you doing, Colette? I love that you asked this. You know what? I'm scrolling through my phone here because I swear to God there was an app that I just saw come out that was trying to tell. It's brand new. It just came up. I downloaded it. Is it on my thing here? Anyways, it's not. I will try to find it. I won't waste our time here by finding it. But anyways, there is an app to kind of set it up to do this. So there are various forms of meditation, because not only that, but that term means different things to different people. It could mean that you are sitting on a pillow with your legs in campfire style, with your thumb touching your middle finger, and you have some kind of chant. Or there is just times where you are just being mindful. So the easiest way that I have known that kind of will say get you into this is to Usually, the best time is always in the morning if you can, and the reason why is because you've already woken up, you're ready to start your day, and especially if you have anything that could potentially be on your mind or in your heart that could be wrecking your day or at least setting your day off, is that this is the way that you can deal with it. And I think it was Michael Brown that ended up coming up with this one, but he said to pick 10 to 15 minutes, find a room without distractions. Maybe if it's earplugs, maybe if it's even wearing like the sleep mask or whatever, and just sit in a position that you're not going to fall asleep. So not something like in your bed or whatever, but sit in a chair and just start breathing through your nose relatively rigorously. And not through your mouth, like not this in through your nose, out through your mouth, but breathe relatively rigorously through your nose so that you can hear it, and that's what you kind of focus on. Not somewhere where you're going and walking the dog and looking, being able to see some sights, or not putting on some music so you can focus on that, but just focus on the breathing. And the rationale behind this is because it will bring you into something called the present moment. Some people, there was Austin and I talked about this. There was the book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. The Power of Now.
Yeah,
that was one of the popular ones. He doesn't really talk about how to meditate or things in it, but it's talking about the present moment, talking about being right now, and how one of the most classic ways that people can be brought into the present moment is when you see people doing extreme sports such as bungee jumping, such as helicopter skiing or whatever. Why? Because you aren't thinking about if you left the oven on or if you left your hair straightener on, you're too busy thinking, holy crap, what is happening at this exact moment? And that's why these people feel such this rush, is because they're living in nowhere but the present moment. So, but if you do this, if you kind of put yourself in one of those sensory deprivation tanks, which is another form of a weird kind of forced form of meditation, but now you're only left with your thoughts and your feelings, and you can focus on that breathing, and you just like I'm gonna do it audibly just so you guys can hear it, but it's like a. And then you can listen to that. You can just hear just that and do it for 10 to 15 minutes. You might think it's ridiculous, but with whatever will start popping into your mind then is because that is what is actually on your mind when you're not distracting the hell out of yourself. When you're listening to heavy metal, when you are at the and another thing to bring you into the present moment too, if you're lifting really, really intensely or whatever, if you're doing a bench press, you're not thinking about did I leave the cookies in the oven to burn them? You are pushing the damn weight and worrying about getting it up. So that's another kind of, I know that's not meditation, that's just bringing yourself into the present moment there, but that's the easiest way that I know, Colette, to kind of start into it, is just wake up the 10 to 15 minutes earlier, start doing, we'll call it the breathing method or whatever, and just see what happens. Now, it will take a little tiny bit of time to get into this because it's weird. It'll sound funny. Go, really? Okay, I'm breathing through my nose. This is going to give me some kind of magical inspiration or whatever. But there was I forget the name of the gentleman who wrote the book too. I think it was Dan Harris or Dan something. It doesn't matter. You can just look for it. It's called 10% Happier. And the entire book is this guy. He actually went and tried to meet Eckhart Tolle. He did like one of these, I think it's like silent treatment camps where he went to somewhere in the middle of the woods where no one was actually allowed to talk. Well, all they did was just like meditate and kind of go around. So he did all these weird things because he was trying to kick his drug habit. He was not fulfilled in life. He was trying to figure out what the meaning of life was, but He when he finally discovered like his own form of meditation, the reason how he got the name of the book is someone was asking him and said, "Hey, like, what's your thoughts on meditation?" He goes, "Well, I don't know if it's kind of the answer to everything, but it will definitely make you 10% happier." And someone said, "Whoa, 10%? Like, that's awesome. Like, that's the difference between a 60 and a 70 on a test, or a 70 and an 80, or even like a failing mark and a passing mark." And he was like, "Damn, you like that? Cool." And so that's what he named his book. And I did read the book, and I really did enjoy it. I recommend it to anyone who's kind of not lost, but just looking for a different perspective on these kind of things. But yeah, that's how powerful that shit can be. And I will tell you, I've been slacking on my meditation, but anytime that I have, and I've made the time for myself to do it, things go better. Like my life just does improve, and I would really like to believe that it is that 10% happier.
Yep. Yeah, it's. And you brought up a good point. Like, meditation doesn't have to be some like
chanting yeah, like where there's candles and incense. Yeah,
I think that's what people envision when they hear the word, and it's not. I mean, she asked, "Is there an app for that?" And there are a bunch of apps. There are guided meditation through YouTube videos. If you need something to help you get started, like, it will be softly talk to you and kind of tell you how to go through it, and maybe you can do it without the video at some point. I mean, literally jump on Google, type in meditation and try some different things. Just see what you think, So
you know
some
what?
of them
Yeah,
are
I'll interrupt you right quick there. It's called Waking Up by Sam Harris is the app
okay.
that I just downloaded. It's got ridiculously good reviews. I'll have to try it out here and kind of let everyone know what I think.
Yeah, definitely. And people are looking for simplicity, nothing that's too daunting, something that they can just pick up and do. They don't have to be like a Buddhist monk to be able to accomplish their meditative state.
No, that's right. Yep.
So cool. Yeah, that's all the questions we have for today.
Well,
wow, that was kind of definitely a mixed bag. That was good though.
Well, yeah, like if you want we definitely went a little bit harder on the mind side here, but geez, I thought that was great. Really good questions out there, and I don't know. I like to think our listeners are a little bit cooler than most listeners because we're starting to get these in-depth questions. I'm like, yeah, that's right. These people are, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah, I'll take those over the, hey, here's my plan. What do you think?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, damn, that was fun as hell. We are going to be continuing on with the podcasts, of course, because we love you guys and think they're fun, and we'll be having the Q&A again next month. But other than that, we will be putting out some more fun ones here, of course. If you guys ever, it doesn't need to be just Q&A day to ask us questions. By all means, fire them away. And until then, we hope you enjoyed this one, and we will catch you next time.